Hello and welcome. I know this is a subject that most of us would rather not dwell on during an average day, and I certainly understand that. However, there is a very important reason to be aware of the information I'm about to share. It's not about an immediate crisis, but about the fact that those who plan ahead can better protect their loved ones from being exploited during what is arguably the most vulnerable time a family can experience. Right now, the funeral industry in the United States is undergoing its most significant shift in 3 decades, with major changes expected around 2026. We're seeing new laws, updated rules, emerging options, and even new warnings from the government about families being overcharged. In this video, I will walk through all of it. My goal is to do this calmly and practically, with no sales pressure, so that when the time does come, you and your family are fully informed. Before we dive in, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel and click the notification bell. I focus on exactly this type of information, changes that impact your finances and your family's security that many people only learn about when it's too late. Subscribe now and let's begin. Let's start with the single most critical point, and the reason the federal government has been investigating the funeral industry so closely for years. When a family loses a loved one, they are grieving. They are emotionally drained and physically exhausted, yet they are forced to make dozens of major decisions in a very short amount of time. The funeral industry is well aware of this dynamic. According to the Federal Trade Commission, a troubling number of funeral homes leverage that emotional vulnerability to bill families for services they do not require, to obscure the prices of more affordable options, and to suggest that certain procedures are required by law when they are not. In a recent investigation, the FTC's own undercover agents called over 250 funeral homes nationwide. They discovered violations of federal pricing regulations in 39 of those calls. In 38 of those instances, the funeral home either outright refused to discuss pricing information over the phone or provided inconsistent and conflicting prices for the exact same services. In one documented example, a funeral home informed a caller that the local health code mandated embalming. This was completely false. Embalming is not required by law in the vast majority of cases in the United States. That funeral home was attempting to charge over $700 for a service that the family had absolutely no legal obligation to buy. The Wall Street Journal ran its own separate deep dive investigation and found more than 500 funeral homes were using deceptive tactics, including overcharging, tacking on hidden fees, and using bait-and-switch pricing schemes. Compounding the issue is a unique arrangement between the FTC and the funeral industry's powerful lobbying group. Because of this, most of these violations are never made public. The funeral home often pays a fee to a remediation program, and the violation is wiped from their record. Families are never told. This is the essential background for the big changes coming in 2026. The FTC's Funeral Rule was first established in 1984 and had its last major update in 1994, long before the internet became a part of our daily lives. Under the current rule, funeral homes are obligated to give you an itemized general price list in person if you ask for one, and to give you accurate pricing over the phone. However, they are not currently required to post their prices on their websites. This means you cannot easily compare costs from the comfort of your own home. You are forced to physically walk into a funeral home while already grieving and emotionally spent, just to find out what services cost. This is precisely the environment where overcharging and manipulation thrive. The FTC has been working to fix this. The proposed updated rule would mandate that all funeral homes publish their complete, itemized price list online. Currently, more than 60% of funeral homes do not list their prices on their websites. This change would finally empower families to compare prices from home in advance, without the time pressure and emotional duress of a sales situation. As of mid-2026, this vital update is in the final stages of regulatory review. Several states have already moved ahead of the federal government, passing their own laws requiring online price transparency. Just recently, on June 3rd, the New York Department of State issued a specific consumer alert, warning families to demand a general price list from any funeral home before signing anything. The alert advises people to walk away from any provider that refuses to provide clear, itemized pricing upfront. It is crucial to know your rights under the current federal law, no matter which state you live in. Under the FTC Funeral Rule, every funeral home is required to give you a written general price list that you can keep. They must give you accurate price information over the phone if you ask for it. You are not required to provide your name, address, or phone number to get this information. You have the right to select only the specific goods and services you want. They cannot force you into buying a package deal. And if a funeral director ever tells you that a service is required by law, ask them to show you that specific law in writing. Common items like embalming, preparation for a viewing, or outer burial containers are almost never universally required by law. A funeral home is legally obligated to inform you if a state or local law actually requires a specific item. If they cannot point to a specific statute, then the requirement does not exist. Now, let's discuss how things are changing and the new ways Americans are choosing to handle final arrangements. The options available in 2026 are genuinely different than they were just a decade ago, and the cost differences are substantial. In 2025, the national cremation rate in the United States exceeded 63%, and that number is projected to continue rising in 2026. The biggest factor driving this trend is cost. A traditional funeral with a burial now costs between $8,000 and $12,000 on average across the country. In many major metropolitan areas, that price is considerably higher. In contrast, direct cremation, where the body is cremated shortly after death without a viewing or elaborate ceremony at the funeral home, typically costs between $1,500 and $2,500. Families can then choose to hold a memorial service separately, on their own schedule, and in a place that is meaningful to them. This could be a park, a favorite restaurant, a backyard, or a community hall. Some families even hold services via video call when relatives are scattered across the country. The memorial can take place days or even weeks after the cremation, allowing the family to grieve and plan without the intense time pressure of a traditional funeral. Beyond cremation, there are two newer options that are now legally available in a growing number of states and are worth being aware of. The first is alkaline hydrolysis, sometimes called water cremation or aquamation. This process uses water and an alkaline solution to gently dissolve the body, a method that produces no emissions and uses far less energy than traditional flame cremation. As of 2026, alkaline hydrolysis is legal in the majority of U.S. states, and its cost is generally comparable to flame cremation. The second is human composting, which is officially known as natural organic reduction. This is now legal in states like Colorado, Washington, California, New York, and several others that have passed new legislation in recent years. In this process, the body is placed in a special vessel with organic materials like wood chips and straw. Over several weeks, it transforms into nutrient-rich soil. This soil can then be returned to the family or donated to conservation land. Colorado, for instance, moved this option forward with legislation signed in April of 2026. For individuals with deeply held environmental values, this is a protected and legal option in a growing number of places. Finally, there is something that could directly impact the financial planning of millions of seniors watching right now. There is a piece of legislation making its way through Congress called the Funeral Coverage Act. If it passes, this bill would permit Americans to use the money in their health savings account, or HSA, to pay for funeral and final disposition costs. Currently, HSA funds can only be used for qualified medical expenses. Funeral costs are explicitly not allowed. However, millions of Americans have built up significant balances in their HSAs, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars, that they currently cannot access for end-of-life planning. The proposed law would allow those funds to be used for exactly that purpose. As of June 2026, this legislation is being actively debated in Congress. If this becomes law, it will significantly change the financial equation for anyone with a substantial HSA balance. Let me conclude with the practical steps that can protect you and your family right now, no matter which of these options you might be considering. First, Always request the general price list from any funeral home before you begin any other discussions or make any decisions. This is your federally protected right. If a provider seems reluctant or delays in giving you this list, consider that resistance a major red flag. Second, compare prices from at least 2 different providers before you commit to anything. Under the current FTC rule, you can do this over the phone. You do not have to visit in person, and you do not have to give your name. Finally, if you are doing any pre-planning, document your wishes clearly. Tell at least 2 different family members where those documents are kept and how to access them. The families who end up overpaying the most are often those forced to make rushed decisions with no prior instructions to guide them. Any decision made slowly, with good information, and without the pressure of a deadline will almost always be a better one than a decision made in a state of grief and urgency. Please subscribe and share this video with a family member who is involved in planning. I'll see you in the next one.